Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Gemini and your moon in Pisces. And the strange thing is that I wasn't sure if I had done this combination, so I looked it up on my channel and I could find no trace of it or the opposite version. And I really could have sworn that I did it, but apparently I didn't. And so when we talk about this combination with the Sun in Gemini, you're looking at somebody who, by virtue of both of these signs being mutable signs, is super flexible and super changeable. The mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. And what they have in common is that they're capable of adapting to circumstances. That can come in handy in many different areas of life, because obviously things do change in life, and the person who is able to change with things is going to have them flow more easily. But sometimes people are so changeable that they don't have, it's almost like they don't have a core self. And this, I feel, can happen with this combination. Both Gemini and Pisces are signs that I see as chameleons in their own right. Gemini is a sign that is ruled by Mercury, and the term mercurial means changeable. And, Gemini people as well as Pisces people can be great mimics, because they can pick up on other people's mannerisms and they can, imitate them. Pisces is a mutable water sign, so water absorbs the energy or the influences that is programmed into it. You've probably heard of being able to program water, and there was that book about, I can't remember the name. I didn't read it, but it was about that doctor or scientist, whatever, who structured the water, talked to the water, and if he said bad words to the water, it, changed its configuration or something. And so Pisces is quite, is it malleable? It's like changeable. It can be shaped. Um, but what I would say is that that Pisces is a sign that is quite impressionable. And especially in the moon position, because this is the emotional nature. So the person with this combination, I think it's a little bit complicated and challenging to have this combination, to be honest with you, because a Gemini person is an air sign, and they're not coming from an emotional vantage point. They're coming from an intellectual vantage point. So they are approaching life from the mind, the perspective of abstract thoughts. And what this means is, if you ever talk to a Libra, a Gemini, or an Aquarius individual, you will see how they have these concepts, these mental constructs. And it can be kind of humorous sometimes, because they can get so far out in their abstractions that it's really like thinking too much, analyzing too much, and making too much out of something. At least that's what other people may think. But at the very least, it gives them a sense of logic, a sense of kind of that order that comes from approaching life from a rational point of view. But then we have the water moon sign, especially with Pisces, because being, a mutable sign, and it does indicate that tendency towards change. And when you have emotional changeability, that can make the person shift a lot emotionally, and there can be instability as a result, emotional instability. And I have said many times on here that I believe Pisces is a sign that may have gone through a lot of trauma. All the water signs may have gone through a lot of trauma. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that they necessarily have attracted more intense situations, although that is entirely possible. But they take it to heart for sure, because they are more naturally sensitive to whatever happens to them. So it becomes more traumatizing. So with a sign like Gemini, they can go through the same situation, and they may be able to stay above the fray because they're not personally identifying with what happens to them. Now, I'm not saying that that is completely 100% healthy, because you can get that fragmentation that occurs, and you will see with some people where they go through a lot of trauma and they appear to be very together, but really there might be like a large shadow self that is maybe like a lot of repressed memories, even that they have not really even delved into, and at some point it probably will come out, and it will be very messy, and the person may feel like they're kind of losing their mind. But I'm saying, just taken separately, with this combination, I wouldn't necessarily say that that would happen, because a person is very emotional. But it can be one of this hot and cold situations, because the sun, although it is not our expressing our emotions specifically, if somebody has their sun in a water sign and their moon in an air sign, like the opposite of this configuration, they still are going to be emotional. Even if the sun is in water and the moon is in air, they're still going to be emotional. But it's going to be something where I feel like they are more comfortable with being an emotional person, because the sun is the egoic self, so it's what we identify with. The moon is just that tendency to react to things. So it's like, you could call it almost unconscious, these reactions. It's not something we're thinking of in advance when we react to things. So the bottom line is that this can be a person who doesn't like that they get emotional. And when I do the sun in Pisces and the moon in Gemini, you will see that it is a little bit different, because the person may welcome the fact that they have more detachment with their emotions, because they're already naturally very emotional. So I think that's an easier combination. So one of the things that I think can show up for this type of person is that truth may be difficult for them to express and to accept. Meaning that Gemini this can be the sign of the used car salesman. And you may have inner planets in Gemini as well. You may have Mercury in Gemini. You may have Mars and or Venus in Gemini. There's a kind of a slippery quality with Gemini. Because Gemini tends to be very indiscriminate in the way that he or she talks. So that means that speech can be very undisciplined, the chatterbox. But sometimes the person may, depending on other things going on, like maybe some hard angles, for instance, the person may be prone to lying because with the moon in Pisces, there can be a deceptive quality to the individual emotionally that creates the desire to manipulate the experience and therefore to get one's needs met. And how this can play out is that the person can play the victim, because Pisces in the shadow aspect is the victim, is the covert narcissist, the person who maybe because they have been through abuse and tending to identify with it in order to get sympathy, in order to get attention, or when I say sympathy, also emotional responsiveness from others, love, you know, if you want to narrow it down. And even like with sympathy, a lot of times I think people look for sympathy because they were abused and they got no sympathy growing up. So they always felt that sense of injustice, and maybe they missed out on nurturing from one or both of their parents. So they felt that sense of being neglected. So they kind of spend their adulthood putting themselves in situations where they are victimized and then looking for sympathy from other people. Even being an addict, which is something that can be associated with Neptune and Pisces, that escapist quality. To me, sometimes I see that as a form of self-abuse, that people are looking for others to pity them, you know, feel sorry for them being in such a wretched state. I live in an area where it's not uncommon to encounter multiple homeless people. People, or maybe in some cases they're not technically homeless. They have some place they can go to. They have a roof over their head, but they hang out on the streets. You know, junkies, alcoholics. But, you know, sometimes there are people who are a lot older, but I see some of the young ones. And in particular, when I look at them, a lot of times I will see that they seem to be really identifying as victims. I'm not talking about other circumstances in their life, but that they want other people to see them in that way. And I know that that is because they have distorted what it means to be respected. Because if we have compassion for other people, it's something that is just being a decent human being. But it's not really the highest thing to feel sorry for somebody, because there's always that quality of pity that is connected to that is not really going to serve that person. It's going to actually solidify, you know, that learned helplessness and that sense of being set apart from others, that they are the ones who are the victims of life. So this kind of combination can be tricky if a person has gone through trauma and they feel a strong urge to escape from those memories, because that can give them the desire to numb themselves, because the water signs tend to be attracted to numbing agents because it numbs their emotions. You know, each element is attracted to different types of drugs. And alcohol is a drug, by the way, but you know what I'm saying. So, and then of course, there can be the denial, because the moon in Pisces is very difficult, because not only is the person feeling a lot of compassion for people who are, you know, tossed aside in life. So this kind of person tends to be attracted to the down and out in society. And if other factors support it, that person may actually get romantically involved with somebody who is in a bad state of being, and then that person can drag them down. So they give sympathy sometimes to I would call it the wrong people. Not to say that those people don't deserve any kind of compassion, but I'm talking about there's also an accompanying belief that those people can't help themselves, that they're just completely helpless, and the person with the moon in Pisces takes it upon themselves to be the eternally loving person that's going to overlook all of this other person's faults. But eventually, this sort of person, if they have been, you know, dragged down to the bowels of hell, they will eventually figure it out and save themselves, kind of resurrect themselves from that situation. But it can come at a price. And other people around them can beg them, tell them, you know, you're, you know, ruining your life being associated with this person. And that individual will not listen a lot of times, because they will actually turn on the people who are trying to protect them from a destructive relationship. And there's also self-delusion with the moon in Pisces sometimes, where the person is lying to themselves about something. So with this combination, there can be a lot of confusion about identity, and the person may, you know, there's a very, I was going to say the word I was looking for is androgynous, but I don't really know that Gemini is known for androgyny. So I'm not going to elaborate on that, but I really feel that that sense of the chameleon, of being one thing one day and another the next, can be, you know, split personalities. Look to the rising sign too, because if it's an immutable sign, the person may look different from day to day. And it can be kind of unnerving for other people to deal with such an individual, because they may sense that there is no core self, that this person is very influenced by the company that they keep. It's very important for somebody with this combination to be impeccable about the kind of information that you absorb and the company that you keep, because Gemini is a sign that loves to just, you know, read everything, read the back of a cereal box, and things like that. just take in whatever information presents itself. And you really can't do that because there can be a lot of deception in information, and we're seeing this nowadays like crazy. So a Gemini person who loves the news has to be very disciplined, but it doesn't have to be just the news. It can be conversations that you have, and you may a Gemini person really loves to socialize because they love to exchange ideas and things. And because of this flexibility, you may enjoy dealing with people from different walks of life, different environments, but if you make it a rule that whatever the environment, whatever the person, it has to be at a high vibration, then you're going to protect yourself. If you're indiscriminate and you just go to any movie, um, deal with any person, you can be inadvertently affected negatively by that entity and not even really realize it because, Gemini is just constantly searching for novelty and, variety. And so the restlessness that Gemini represents is exacerbated with Pisces. I think there's a very fickle quality with this combination, and other people may sense it. That's what I was really referring to. That when I talk about the discomfort that other people may feel in dealing with you, because they may feel that you twist in the wind, that what's true today may not be true tomorrow, and you may agree and say, why should I have to commit to anything? But there's a saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. So there has to be some kind of anchor to your beliefs, your habits, your emotions. If you just are constantly changing and drifting, then everything will remain on the surface and you will never develop anything, because you got that monkey mind that just keeps jumping from limb to limb and never. It's like the master of all, was it jack of all trades, master of none? In relationships, this can be the same thing, where you're looking for a variety. With the moon in Pisces, you may be attracted to the lost souls, and that can be a really lethal combination in terms of relationships that are uh, extremely dysfunctional, because you're attracted to the wrong thing. Being being this combination of air and water, you have to honor both the intellect and the spiritual sides of yourself. And it's very possible that because these two elements are so different, that the individual sides with one over the other. And this is not naturally going to be that you're going to side with the intellect, given that your sun is in air, because it is possible that as a Gemini, you have several inner planets in water, and that would tip it over in the emotional side of things. But even like with Pisces individuals, sometimes they are very anti-woo, anti-spiritual stuff, and they make a really big point of being of believing the science, and everything has to be linear and rational, because it's almost like they're afraid of their psychic ability and that side of life. I think of Pisces as the most psychic of all the signs, and in a natural way, I mean. All signs can be psychic, but in a natural way. But it can be scary, I suppose, because some of these abilities, if if they happen when the moon in Pisces person is very young, it might be confusing. It might be kind of frightening to see, apparitions or to hear voices or whatever. So, and other people can shame the individual and act like they're doing something wrong, or that they are, tuning into negative spirits. And then they shut down that side of themselves. So you may be very critical of spiritual matters, or you can be immersed in the spiritual, but you're not grounded enough. And so there has to be balance, and especially with this combination being so diametrically opposed, because of the elements that they represent, that you have to really make a point of it. These two signs square off. Now, whether your sun and moon actually officially square off is a different story, because you have to look at what degrees they are. But to me, that's besides the point. We, just by virtue of the signs that they represent, it can show that very different way of approaching life. And so happiness, if you want happiness in your life, which to me is really about peace of mind. It's not about this constant state of bliss that's like this peak experience, but this serenity, this more comfortable in your own skin type of feeling. For this combination, you have to learn how to be consistent with things. You may have a tendency to just like kind of switch off into a new direction, because you might be easily bored, and you might have to cultivate some ability to concentrate if you tend to be ADD, and that kind of thing. Because if you don't do that and you just go on every whim, as I stated earlier, you might feel like you never master anything. And you can feel like you start projects and never finish them, or start books and never finish them, and relationships never really are cultivated. You just kind of move on after the initial thrill. And then it's like everything is unfinished, nothing is substantial. And so by making a commitment, maybe in one area of your life, that you're going to stick with something for at least a certain period of time, you can increase the odds of, kind of laying down certain roots. You might have to, retrain yourself, because the more that we indulge that need for novelty, the more it kind of weakens our ability to withstand kind of that same type of thing over and over again. I was going to use the word monotony, but I don't think that's a positive word. But some people are easily bored, and they have to tolerate the familiar in order to retrain themselves, so they're not constantly seeking out new things to the detriment of cultivating that kind of constancy, which can add a richness to life. So anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, You can click on the link below. I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. Take care. Bye.